Top 5 questions about Oklahoma and Texas potentially leaving early. So these are just 5 things that, we had Brett McMurphy on earlier. It was a great segment. You can listen to it. But 5 questions, I just have because of this. Number 5, does the Big 12 have expansion plans in the barrel because of this and maybe would like to start moving on them a little earlier? We don't know the whole specs of the TV deal. I know there's that thing of, these teams don't add this value and blah, blah, blah. But do they have plans that would be easier for them to move on if this was already a year ahead and they could start going on, even if it's not going to happen necessarily in 2026, if they had just a year to maybe start looking at it, would it make it better?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I don't know. Based off just reading the tea leaves and kind of just my own hunch, I feel like expansion is something that Brett Yormark is open to, like he says, but I don't feel like there's anybody specifically, like outside of the Gonzaga thing. Like, I don't think that they're like on Boise State and like as soon as OU and Texas move, they're like, now we can go get the Broncos. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I think, I don't know. I feel like outside of like a Gonzaga type move that would be sort of unique, they're sort of waiting and waiting ready to move if they need to. But I don't know that it has to do with OU and Texas, in my opinion. But, never know.
Yeah. Number 4, when will we see the exact framework of the TV deal, which we haven't seen yet? I mean, like it's generally been told to us what's going on and what they're going to have, because I think when we see that will kind of allow us to know more about how they can work this over the next couple years and what they're going to be getting back. And if they do, I think if you negotiate an exit a year early, everybody's going to lose a little bit of money, but how much is a little bit, and do you make that up on the next one?
Did the Big 12 Conference ever release confirmation on the TV deal?
Not that I ever saw.
Just reports, and again, no one said, no, it's not true either. There was no rebuttal, but that's a good point. Yeah, no one's going to lose money if you're one of the 8 remaining teams. You're not losing money. You're going to gain some money, even though there may be a give and take on what they and or ESPN and or Fox do if Texas and Oklahoma leave a year early. But they're going to get something back even for that.
Yeah.
They're going to get something back.
Yeah, I mean, there's some details to sort through, but no, I feel like we just got caught up in the PR war. That's what that TV announcement was. Like, oh, we beat the Pac-12 to the TV deal.
Yeah.
And then, like, as soon as they got to run a victory lap, then it kind of faded away. And meanwhile, the Pac-12 is, like, anti-PR. Like, the stuff that they actually do say, like last week with Kleofkoff talking about Deion to Colorado is, like, part of the reason why the TV deal is delayed. And even if that's not what he intended to say, that's how it came across. Like, I feel like their PR has been less than noteworthy if they've even tried really. Whereas with your marketing company, it's like, this is what, like, they've really made it a point, almost to the point of like, I need to see some details before I really buy into all, you know what I mean? Buy into all the hype. But yeah, I mean, it would be nice to see what the exact terms are, especially if there's an early exit. And I know the hope was that they wouldn't be making like half of what they were making before, and it looks as though, based on the early reports, they could be making a slightly more, or at least what they were making, which would be a victory. But yeah, we've seen nothing official yet.
Yeah, and I was on a podcast yesterday, by the way, and they said something about that, and I said, look, that's George Kleofkoff's talking point, but it doesn't add money to a TV deal that will be in place maybe after he's not the coach of Colorado anymore.
What, Colorado specifically? Yeah, no way.
It adds value to them in the short term immediately for sure. But as far as a TV deal, the TV deal's not even planning on Dan Lanning being the coach at Oregon at the end of it. They can't do that. Like if USC was still in the conference, they couldn't count on Lincoln Riley being there, because what if he goes to the NFL? There's all these things that could happen that you can't count on a coach being there.
Bob Thompson has responded to people throughout the weekend, which he's good at doing. And he mentioned that no matter what, it's not going to, no matter what you hope it is, it's not really going to be, no matter if it's Deion or for Nick Saban all of a sudden was coaching at Cal. It's just not going to move the TV needle. You're
probably happy that you can sell ads better for Colorado games if you're the TV partners while he's there.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And so that increases the value in those seasons, but there might be some demand. But the minute he leaves, I mean, you're going to have to make up for the fact, especially if the next hire is not going to be He might even be a better coach, but Deion Sanders is not going to be the head coach of Colorado forever, and the next guy's not going to be as exciting as Deion because no one is. I mean, Deion spent 30 years building a brand. Number 3, how much does waiting out the Pac-12 have to do with this? Because it seems like you said, there's a PR war going on here, and do they, maybe have another way to take a step forward on the Pac-12 to say hey, look, we've got everything in place. Look at you guys. You can't even figure out your TV deal.
How much does waiting out have to do with what?
Making this early, making the move early. It's good for the SEC. It's good for the Big 12. Everybody's to where they are. And then you can, again, when it comes back to expansion, you can tell the Pac-12 schools that might be interested, look, we've got our ducks in a row already. We're ready to move on the next thing.
Yeah, I guess I'm just confused about what you mean.
Maybe the wording.
Yeah.
How much does the Pac-12 and their uncertainty have to do with, any move that they make, planning out, look, this conference is, teetering a little bit. Do we make these moves, big moves, to show every potential school that we're ready to make big moves?
I think that Your Marks definitely played the disruption card more than a couple of times. I think that's what the TV announcement was, given that they didn't need to make a TV announcement anytime soon and still don't for another year or two. So why were they doing it months ago? I think that definitely plays into it. I think that they know full well, and we're not even privy to the conversations that Your Mark has with people like Kevin Warren or Greg Sankey or others, but we do know that he apparently has a pretty good relationship with Warren. Now, I don't think Warren would reveal the full Big Ten master plan, but if there's even some scuttlebutt that the Oregon-Washington cards are still in play or something along those lines, I think that if disruption's coming, further disruption, and it could affect the Pac-12, and that effect could leave them very vulnerable, then if you're playing chess, you're looking at, okay, well, this might happen, that would leave these, and we could go pick off these, and I definitely think he's playing a couple steps ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Number 2, did the 12-team playoff make this more realistic in that now, you know what it's going to be, it's here, you can kind of stop worrying about that one thing and move on to the next thing. So,
yeah, I don't know if it was a reason, but it definitely doesn't hurt. And it could be a reason for all we know. Just the fact that, you did have a couple years where you do have better odds of an OU or Texas getting in, but now with the 12 team, and who knows how quickly that might become 16 based on recent scuttlebutt, which that's where I sort of start drawing the line there. But regardless, I think the 12-team playoff opens it up to where, you could have, in theory, 6 SEC teams, these wild predictions about, what it could look like. Certainly more room for more teams from that conference as opposed to how exclusive it is right now. I don't think it's an enticing enough thing to force all of this, but I definitely think it's some butter on the bread to make you go oh, yeah, there's another reason on top of other reasons why it makes sense to go ahead and jump right now, and it won't have as negative an effect if we were to jump into a 4-team landscape where the odds of either one of those teams making it at the moment are, as SEC teams, very small, very small at the moment.
Yeah. And number 1, what about the money? That's what it's what about this is really the thing that needs to be, all these other 4 questions don't matter at the end of it when it comes down to, what about the money? Who's going to get what? How's it going to be distributed? How are you going to figure it out? And then if they figure out an early exit, then I'm sure that the, everybody else with a grant of rights that they'd like to get out of will try to build that as the framework from going forward, because this was, look, the teams from the AAC, they all got out of their grant of rights a year earlier than they were supposed to, or a couple years, but that wasn't a gigantic grant of rights that the money that they're going to come back in can't pay for over a few years because it's stretched out. This is a much larger grant of rights, so it's not like you can just be well, we can have that done in 3 years. No, if it's $80 million, that's a big chunk over 3-4 years to pay out. That's something you want to pay out over 10 years.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear that too. I know from, if you're looking at the Big 12 side of things, I think every fan is hoping that Your Mark's keeping them to as pretty close to the same exact amount of money as they should owe. As that's what people want to see. They want to see them pay the full meal deal. They don't want them to get any bargain price to exit and go collect their riches in the SEC. So I think a lot of people are wondering about exactly what the Big 12 could stand to gain financially, and it's not going to be enough to keep the conference floating by itself for 20, but it'll be substantial. I mean, tens of millions of dollars, if not all added up, over $100 million. I mean, that's significant no matter who you are. So yeah, I don't think anybody wants to see much less than what is owed, and what exactly that figure is right now, I'm not sure, but it would be higher with an earlier exit. And that's part of probably what's, your Mark's eyeing is like, if you're going to be here disgruntled, but we can get $100+ million from you guys on the way out, then that's a worthy trade-off. So yeah, I think that's a very interesting aspect of this.
So it's been a hell of a day.